Ever wondered if the skills learned on the streets, or even behind bars, could be the secret sauce to building a multi-million-dollar empire? Today, we're diving into the unbelievable story of a man who traded a prison cell for a CEO's office, not by seeking forgiveness, but by weaponizing his past. This isn't your typical redemption story. It's a masterclass in power, strategy, and flipping the script on society itself. Picture this. The prison gates swing open. For most, this moment is a mix of relief and terror. The stigma of a criminal record feels like a permanent stain, a brand that slams doors shut before you even get a chance to knock. But for our subject, this was just phase one. He walked out, not with his head down, but with a plan already in motion. The first hurdle wasn't just finding a job. It was overcoming the judgment that greets every returning citizen. Society expected him to fail, to be grateful for scraps. He had other ideas. His real work had started long before his release. Prison, for him, wasn't just dead time. It was a networking event unlike any other. He wasn't just surviving. He was building alliances. He identified the thinkers, the planners, the future players, forging connections that would become the bedrock of his future ventures. These weren't just friendships. They were strategic partnerships forged in an environment where trust is the most valuable currency. And then there's the question of startup capital. How do you get a business loan with a rap sheet a mile long? You don't. He faced what we'll call the dirty money dilemma. The initial seed money for his legitimate empire didn't come from a bank or an angel investor. It came from the very world he was supposedly leaving behind. He leveraged pre-existing, and let's be blunt, often illicit capital, channeling it into his first legitimate ventures. It was a high-risk, high-reward move that became the launchpad for everything that followed. Once he was on the outside, he began to navigate the shadows with a skill honed over years. This was the art of the comeback, played by a different set of rules. Those underworld alliances he'd built, they didn't just disappear. He transformed former criminal associates into operational assets. Some became silent partners, providing capital and connections. Others offered a unique form of enforcement and loyalty that you simply can't hire through a recruitment agency. He turned a perceived liability into a formidable business advantage. His genius was in identifying markets where his past wasn't a handicap, but a source of genuine insight. Think about industries that operate on the fringes, markets overlooked by mainstream corporations. He understood the language, the needs, and the psychology of these customers because he was one of them. While others saw risk and uncertainty, he saw untapped potential and a customer base that legacy businesses simply couldn't reach or understand. But to build a lasting empire, you can't stay in the shadows forever. This led to the meticulous art of reputation laundering. It wasn't about pretending his past didn't exist. It was about building a new, public-facing narrative. He engaged in strategic philanthropy, donating to community causes and sponsoring local events. Every public appearance was carefully managed, crafting an image of a savvy businessman who had overcome adversity. He wasn't just cleaning his name. He was building a legitimate brand, brick by painstaking brick. This unconventional background gave him what we can call the felon's advantage. In the cutthroat world of business, where corporate executives are playing chess, he was playing a different game entirely. Years of surviving in high-stakes environments had stripped away his fear of confrontation and failure. This translated into aggressive, decisive business tactics that often left his more conventional competitors stunned. He wasn't afraid to take massive risks, to make bold moves, and to operate with a level of street smarts that can't be taught in any business school. His strategy wasn't just aggressive. It was also incredibly smart. He understood the danger of putting all his eggs in one basket. From the very beginning, he focused on building a diversified portfolio. He invested in overlooked real estate in transitioning neighborhoods, buying up properties others deemed too risky. But he didn't stop there. He branched out, sinking capital into tech startups and other ventures, completely unrelated to his initial businesses. This diversification protected his wealth and created multiple, independent streams of revenue, making his empire incredibly resilient. Of course, operating this way means walking a constant legal tightrope. One wrong step could send the whole house of cards tumbling down. To control this, he surrounded himself with a fortress of legal and financial experts. He didn't just hire a good lawyer. He hired the best legal team money could buy. He employed top-tier compliance officers whose entire job was to ensure every single transaction, every contract, and every new venture was meticulously structured to stay just on the right side of the law. He understood the system well enough to know exactly how to operate within its boundaries, even while pushing them. Now, here's where his story completely diverges from the Hollywood narrative. He consciously rejected the redemption arc. He never went on a talk show to cry and ask for forgiveness. He never positioned himself as a changed man who regretted his past. Instead, he owned it. He made a deliberate choice to integrate his history into his identity. This wasn't about erasing the past. It was about demonstrating that it didn't define his limits. This refusal to apologize was, in itself, a profound statement of power. He understood the psychological warfare of business and power. He didn't just rely on charisma or networking to get what he wanted. He leveraged the fear and respect his reputation commanded. In negotiations, his very presence in the room was a strategic tool. People knew his story, and that story carried an unspoken weight. He mastered the art of controlling narratives, ensuring that whether people liked him or feared him, they always respected his position and his power. Ultimately, his journey was an act of ultimate defiance. He didn't climb the ladder of success. He built his own ladder next to it. He created a path where the traditional gatekeepers, the banks, the investors, the socialites who decide who's in and who's out, became completely irrelevant. His success wasn't granted by them. It was taken, built on his own terms, according to his own rules. He proved that you don't need society's permission to become a titan. So, what is the legacy of such an ambition? His empire had a real and measurable ripple effect. On one hand, he created jobs and invested in communities that had long been neglected. On the other, his methods normalized a certain ruthlessness in the local business landscape. His success blurred the lines, forcing us to ask uncomfortable questions. What truly constitutes a legitimate empire when its foundations are built on such questionable ground? Can we, or should we, separate the outcome from the methods used to achieve it? This brings us to the enduring paradox of his story. Here is a man who is branded a societal outcast, a failure, someone to be locked away and forgotten. Yet, he emerged to become a titan of industry, defying every conventional narrative of success. His story is uncomfortable because it challenges our neat little boxers of good and bad, of legal and illegal, of redemption and defiance. It proves that the path to power is rarely clean, and that the skills for survival in one world can, with enough audacity and intelligence, be the very skills needed to conquer another. Thanks for watching. If this story made you think, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the figures who break all the rules. See you in the next one.